All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. Oh yeah, let me get that light on too there, see, because I'm a little bit in the shadows. Or just get a little bit of a side light as well. Probably should work on the lighting. All sorts of things to make the appearance of the videos just a little more, I guess, interesting. We got to get that going since I'm pretty pleased with the production at this point, but the visuals could be better for sure. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me on this free-for-all. And I'm going to be focusing in sort of a little bit of a meta stuff on, I guess, what many would call the left media, past couple of programs or recent programs. We talked about the New York Times coverage that I think was wanting in various respects, whether it was the David French piece that seemed so much of an apologia or even more just an outright defense of Israel. Arlen had an interesting comment. We'll get to that about my discussion of David French's article there. Israel's terrible choice or terrible, I guess, dilemma. I'm not sure what it was called, but I had real problems with it. And also the coverage the New York Times provided of a protest/rally, Black Lives Matter, coming to the city of Oakdale, California, small town, really not a city, back in June of 2020, and the Times coverage, again, very poor and tendentious. It was designed to present an ideological view, which I don't really disagree with, that we need local media. We need more, I guess, traditional, if you want to say those are newspapers, radio station, TV station. We need more local, traditional media coverage. I don't disagree with that, but the Times argument fell flat because of its poor, I would say, if not dishonest coverage, certainly very misleading. All right, if you want to join me, we do ask for your calls here today, 240-242-5646. Got a call from a friend, not just of Halitics, but of Hal earlier today, and the caller said they might call in. So we live in hope that person would be great to talk to. But if not, I'm happy to continue, as I have been this week, to pretty much carry the ball, except with Arlen on Tuesday. All right, so the centering of Gaza will continue as long as the genocide by Israel and the United States continues. The death toll there, and I told you the numbers are a little bit, fudgy or a little bit fluid in terms of the number who are killed by Israel and the United States. I like the Anadolu Ajansi coverage because they seem very definitive. They use specific numbers, and that makes it easier for me. Now, whether they're right or not, I don't know, but they tend to be very precise. So their headline today, this is the Turkish news agency Ajansi, which I think means agency in Turkish. Gaza death toll nears 52,800 as Israel continues a genocidal war. And you can see the date line there, 9/05/2025, obviously the 9 referencing the date. The European convention is the day goes, then the month, then the year. I actually like that better because I like to go 9/May/25. So you break up the two numbers, the day and the year, with the month. So that is today's date. This is from Turkey, Turkish news service there, and they have a count nearing 52,800. But as I indicated, Anadolu Ajansi is very precise, so they don't just leave it at nearing 52,800. And I think the number I got yesterday was a little higher than what Anadolu Ajansi is using. So you may see a little bit of a drop from yesterday's death count. Obviously, there's no real drop. People don't miraculously come back to life, even though there's a new pope who seems really good, and I really like what he has to say. In general, there may be some questions about his past for sure, but even he doesn't have the power to resurrect the dead. Those killed by Israel and by American weaponry, they are never coming back. 52,787 Palestinians killed in Israel's genocidal war, 27 over the past 24 hours, and many people are still trapped under the rubble and on road. So we don't really know, how their count might or might not differ from some of the other agencies. I think they all rely on the Palestinian Health Ministry, so I don't really understand why there would be different numbers, but it may just be depending on when they're updated by the news service. And they have a count of 2678 killed since the ceasefire was abruptly ended by Israel in February. Or actually, it was in March. It's amazing. It's just a little over a month of just ceaseless killing by Israel, massacre, bloodshed by Israel. 240-242-5646 if you want to comment on that. Got a comment on yesterday's program addressing this, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Here is your HAL update. And again, these are fluid, and we do the best we can to get the numbers right, but I think it's important that we understand just how horrific, just how ugly, how despicable the actions of Israel and the United States are. 27 additional deaths yesterday. I should say 27 additional deaths yesterday is how I should have framed that, or on May 8th, which is what I will do. And the total dead since the 23rd, and then you can go to the Trump number, which is 2678, according to Anadolu Ajansi, and we get that to well over 1,000 children. So just, business as usual there in the Middle East. It's so sad, so horrific, and monstrous too. I mean, it's sad and also a terrible, terrible crime that the Israeli government, with the U.S.'s full support, is committing. Want to join me to discuss this or anything else that's in the news? 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you, and do want to, at some point, we'll get into a little discussion of the Pope. So if you have any thoughts on the new Pope Leo, I believe it's the 14th. I did reach out to a friend of the show, Catholic Jack, hoping he would have some thoughts, and I've asked him to come join us next week to talk about his take on the new Pope. He has not been on recently. I'm hoping we can change that. He did have a rather cryptic remark, which was he likes the Pope's new name. I do too. Leo the 13th, I believe, was the last Leo. Obviously, Leo the 14th, if that's the new Pope. Obviously, the last Leo was Leo the 13th. The one I'm thinking of was in the 19th century, the very end of the 19th century. He was the author of, or at least signed on to the Rerum Novarum, which explicitly condones, explicitly supports the right of working people to organize. So this expresses the Catholic Church's solidarity with working people. I think it's great that the new Leo, by taking the name of the most recent Leo, Leo the 13th, is hearkening to that approach, that centering of the rights of working people. And let me just make sure that is correct. Maybe there was another, because there could have been other Leos, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be the same. Well, it's the same name, but there's a lot of different ones. It was Leo the 13th who was responsible for issuing the encyclical on capital and labor. And so Leo the 14th, the new Pope, Robert, I believe, right? Robert Francis Prevost, who is American. And interestingly, mixed race. He was, although he looked white to me, I looked at his image and I thought, well, he's white, but he's somewhat dark complected. Apparently he's Creole, mixed race. Really interesting, really cool, huh? I think there may have been some people use the word black. He's a black pope. I don't know if he's black, but mixed race. But apparently there may have been in the past, is that possible, a mixed race pope? I'm not sure if there was one before Pope Leo. And if Pope Leo, how he fits into that. But it's cool anyway. I mean, I don't believe that should be some sort of a determining factor when we choose people for specific roles, or certainly it may be a tiebreaker, but I'm not a huge fan of like the DEI where you actively try to fill positions with, especially, where they're a limited number. I do believe in the best available candidate. But again, you have very closely matched. Sure, let's diversify as much as we can. He is considered a descendant of Creole people of color. Very cool. So I'm really interested in that. All right, there's the phone ringing. I guess you probably heard it. I had a little too loud. I got to turn that down. Let's go right to the phones. Who do we have on the line? I don't know if I hear you. Can you hear me? I don't know why I don't. Usually our phones have been working beautifully, but I see it's ringing. Yeah, we should be able to hear you. Let me see why I don't have the voice call. I see that you are trying to talk, and yet I am not hearing you, caller. What could I be doing wrong here? It's usually me who screws something up, but I can't figure that out. We haven't had any trouble. They hung up, and we heard it ring. I think, well, you weren't muted. We're going to try one more time. All right, caller, I've got you. Can you hear me? But I can't hear you. Why is that? What is the matter with my speaker? It's on. Yeah, I am sorry that I'm not getting your call here. This is very frustrating for me. Let's figure out why that could possibly be. Don't call back at this point. We'll see if we can figure that out going forward. It is interesting. Yeah, it was ringing, and yet then at the same point, no. Let's see if that is what the problem was. Microphone default, yeah. And that's the one thing that isn't working, that 17 cable. Virtual audio cable 17. Let's try that. Let's change that to 23, and we'll see if this works. Okay, we're going to see if we can get you. Caller in 1 second. Yeah, we got you. Who's this? Hello? Oh, maybe not. Hi, caller. Are you there? Nope. Wow, they really want to talk to me too, and it's just not working. This is very, very frustrating. Yeah, so now if you call, I should be able to hear you. If you call back one more time, caller, I should have you. Yeah, try again. All right, if you don't call, that's fine. 2402. Let's get to the news. So here are some of our commentary here. I'm going to call you back because I know they really wanted to talk to me, and I'm happy to do that. And see if we can get them on the line here. I hate having these tech problems, man. What a drag, huh? Now you can hear that ringing too.
Hey, this is Ari.
Hey, Ari, gotcha now. I don't know, there was a problem with one of my virtual audio cables, and I couldn't hear you, but I got you. What's on your mind, my friend?
Well, I was just going to say, first of all, thanks again for your talk and highlighting the Palestinian issue. I think that's amazing what you're doing. You're doing God's work, maybe better than the Pope even,
Well, the Pope gets a lot of credit. He stood up to the vice president, before he was a Pope even, so which is pretty cool. Like, he took on what I think really horrible statements by Vance, and he did that before he was Pope. So a lot of credit to Father Prevost.
I was thinking how this is one of my John Lennon type of moments, I suppose. If the Catholic Church at the local level, the parish, I think it's the largest per individual denomination or whatever. I think it's the largest in the world, even amongst the Christians. I could be wrong, but I think it still rates high up there. Just imagine if at the local level, the priests and beyond, the bishops and all the above, archbishops and all that, they speak to the laity, the average person who's attending church on Sundays every week, and even beyond Sundays. about the issues that really concerns most people. It's obvious that the majority of the Americans, whether Catholic or Jewish, Muslim, or any religion, are opposed to this situation of genocide in Gaza and Palestine. So imagine if the church can say, well, this is a church. We're not going to divide politics versus religion. This is a religious place, and we advocate for what's going on. We advocate for what the Pope may have said. So I don't see that happening. I don't go to church very much. I'm not a very religious church attending person. I'm just wondering why can't this be something the Catholic Church can promote, and even beyond, not just the Catholics, the Protestants. Maybe put aside those evangelical Zionists on the side, but the Baptists, the Lutherans, etc. What do you think of this idea, where the Catholic?
Well, I mean, I'm so with you on this one, Ari. 100,000%. I don't think there's any question that faith leaders have an important role to play. And I just put on the screen here. This is the tweet that Father Prevost, now the Pope Leo the 14th,
right,
is getting a lot of favorable publicity. In my view, it's very favorable, where he took on J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance gave a speech where he said, we're called first to love ourselves, then our family, then our community. And then he criticized the left, says it completely wrong. And the Pope says, no, 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 no. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. We're all made in God's image. And we have we're tasked with loving everyone and doing right by everyone. That was his clear message. And you can see he got 22.9 million views when I copied this. So that's a tremendous amount of influence that he has.
Sure. Wow. Amazing. And it might even work better than calling your local representatives.
Well, the Pope isn't, as far as we know. You hope they're not swayed by corporate dollars. I'm not saying there hasn't been plenty of corruption in the church. There has been, and there have been plenty of situations where, yes, money has talked loudly, but you kind of hope that they're a little bit insulated from that in the Vatican.
Imagine the money plate when they pass around for doing the talk first and then collect some money, and that will beat any nonprofit in the world. I mean, churches are a nonprofit, technically, whatever.
I guess. I mean, it's incredibly wealthy, the Catholic Church. A lot of churches aren't wealthy, right? A lot of especially, churches that serve Protestant churches that serve poor communities are not wealthy.
Right.
And that has obviously is problematic too.
Every dollar helps, though.
It's true. It's true, Ari. All right. Did you want to just weigh in on the Pope? I appreciate your kind words. And sorry we had the problem getting you on the air. Like I said, there's a weird thing. I've never seen that before with the
Me too. That was the
virtual cable problem.
Yep. All right. Love to you and your family. Have a nice weekend, Hal.
All right. You too. Thanks for the love. I really appreciate that. And right back at you as well. I do love all of my callers and listeners, just as the Pope has urged that we have a duty to love each other. And I often clearly fail at that, but I do the best I can. And I think most of us at least try. All right. Let me just give you some commentary. This is the free for all. So if I don't hear you, if you call, well, I mean, Ari did call and we had trouble getting him on the air. Finally did. I had to, it's strange. You know what? Somebody once said that, the computers, you think they should be perfect, but clearly there are many, many problems. It must be. I can't even say it's a hardware because everything is virtual. So I really can't figure out why that. We'll figure it out. Maybe. So from comments from yesterday's program. So this is a new recent commentator, Splash Ken Berger. I have no idea who you are, Splash Ken Berger, but thank you very much for tuning in and for commenting. If you're watching now, please give me a call, 240-242-5646. And hey, Art, if you want to give me a call, go ahead as well. Love to see. Now, that's the advantage. Art's watching on Facebook, and I had been focused solely on YouTube because I want to concentrate viewers in one platform. But that said, it is great to have you. I don't care where you are, just wherever you are. And Ari there commenting. We got emoji as well. How does this roll off the tongue, says Splash Ken Berger? United States of the Levant, Gaza, West Bank, and Jerusalem could be districts alongside maybe like a Negev, or I think it's pronounced Negev. That's the sort of southern desert. Ashdod and central Israel districts under one UN-administered federal government plus equal rights for all, and all you said as well. That's the fairest thing I've thought of during many sleepless nights. So Splash Ken Berger providing a potential solution, right, to the wars in the Middle East. And we've said right now, that I've said that a two-state solution doesn't work. We see it doesn't work with Pakistan and India about to possibly explode in nuclear war. That was a two-state solution based on religion, and that's what some are calling for, a two-state solution based on religion, a Muslim Palestinian state and an Jewish Israeli state. And I reject that. I've called for a one-state solution. Splash Ken Berger sort of saying, let's have a confederacy. We'll have different states that together comprise Israel. And I have no problem, whatever works, as long as there's true equality, as long as there's, you have to have economic justice too. It can't just be political where we all get one vote, but all the money, all the wealth, all the income is, in Israel, and the rest is kind of parceled out to Gaza, the West. No, that doesn't work. You have to make sure that everyone has enough and no one has too much. So what Splash Ken Berger say, maybe this is a really good idea. Yeah, have the U.S. of the Levant, Gaza, West Bank, and Jerusalem, alongside, you have these other states, almost like a state setup. But I think more of a federalist idea where the states that comprise the United States of the Levant are have a lot more independence, and that may work. But the problem you get there is some of those states are going to have predominantly Jewish populations, and some are going to have predominantly Muslim. And I think you run into situations there where there's going to be some bias, prejudice, and that's why I think a stronger central government can be the best solution, as long as that government, that central government, has to, and there is some sort of international oversight, guarantee everyone's rights. I think that's critical. But great thinking, Splash Ken Berger, and you may well be right. I'm not rejecting your solution whatsoever. May well be the best, maybe the most acceptable to the people in the region. From Arlen, our good friend and co-host on Tuesdays, it should be noted he's taking a little bit of issue of my criticism of French, my criticism basically being that French is ignoring the humanitarian crimes, the crimes against humanity committed by Israel in his somewhat antiseptic description of the dilemma Israel faces, which is it has to get rid of Hamas, but at the same time, if it, kills everybody, that's not so good. And if it occupies, and there's been a lot of pushback against occupation of Gaza, which French says is essential. Israel has to actually occupy Gaza. And my answer is get the hell out of there, Israel. Just stop it. Just move out completely, and then work in the international framework to create a truly just one-state solution. Arlen pointing out, well, French really says that his analysis is a military one. He's just basically looking at assuming Israel's goals are eliminating Hamas and freeing the hostages, then this is what it should do. It needs to occupy Gaza. And my response is, well, you haven't freed the hostages. You've only killed more and more of them by your actions. And occupation is a recipe for absolute, complete, and utter disaster. All right, 240-242-5646. Thank you, Ari, for the call. Let's get to some more stories. Again, this is sort of the free-for-all is always for comments. It's for kind of what's been going back and forth on social media, for your calls, etc. This I note. So, anyone who's been following me, which isn't a lot of people, but there are some, right? For decades now, where I've been commenting both on radio, in my writing, and how, Ginsburg.com, which I've kind of stopped doing. I have stopped doing. I probably should try to resuscitate that, but it's so much work. Writing is a lot of work. Doing these programs is a lot of work. I only have so much time in the day. Commenting on social media. I have always centered, victims of empire right now, Israel, Gaza, but also this climate catastrophe, the human cause. This is the existential threat that, probably is the uber existential threat. And it's, not just humanity, obviously, but the planet's biodiversity. Theirs continues. It's extraordinary. We've seen the 10 hottest years on record since at least the 1850s, 1860s. Whenever we've had good records, reasonably good, there's no question the 10 hottest years have been the most 10 recent years. So 2015 to 2024 have been the hot. That's just an incredible run. There has to be a reason for that. That doesn't happen randomly. It's not just so randomly we just decide to have 10 hot years. Now, the reason might not be human activity. Could be some other factor. But the scientists who have examined this have concluded, no, there's no other factor. And what we do know through the record of the Earth's climate is there is a very close correlation between the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and temperatures on Earth. A close correlation. They're directly correlated. The more CO2 is in the atmosphere, parts per million, the hotter it gets. That has been documented over time, over millennia, over millions of years. And right now we have the highest concentration of CO2 we've seen in the atmosphere, I think, in millions and millions of years. And we have very, increasingly hot temperatures here on Earth. So people still are in denial. They just don't want to admit it. They don't want to accept it for a variety of reasons. One is people recoil against the notion that we have to work together, that there needs to be a concerted effort to rein in this existential threat to humanity. A lot of people don't like it. They're capitalists. They're free marketers. They're rugged individualists. I get to do whatever you want. What do you mean? If I want to burn, propane in my backyard, I get to do it. No one tells me I can't do that. So there's that attitude. And then there's obviously those who are profiting, the profiteers. They're stoking the flames of discontent with the climate crisis movement. And finally, there's many of the people who are actually talking about this do come across as hypocritical, do come across as holier than thou, do come across as self-righteous, and it turns people off. I have fight that myself. People say, well, you're privileged, you have such a nice lifestyle, yeah, you can afford higher gasoline prices, what about me? And my response has always been, yeah, you got a really good point. The pain has to be inflicted on the rich, the upper middle class, the middle class. And the poor, struggling working people we have to make sure that to the extent that prices, fossil fuels go up, which they absolutely have to go up to save the planet, those at the bottom are protected the most as we transition. So this comment, from We the People political debate group, I love these groups. I love where there's differences of opinion. I hate when people preach to the converted and you're in your own little, blue wave group or whatever, and you can't say anything negative about it. I hate that. It's much better when we go back and forth. The problem I have with some of these groups, though, is that people only want to listen to themselves. They're not willing to see the evidence that disproves or weakens their own arguments. Very, very, very frustrating, to say the least. So there's this absurd claim here by this person. John Kerry, Al Gore, and AOC all claimed this ice would be gone by 2030 and we would be underwater by 2027 and the sheep swallow. So I don't think anybody ever claimed that Antarctica was going to be ice-free by 2030. No one said that. I didn't even research that. There have been talks about ice-free Arctic. This is the Antarctic. There have been talks about an ice-free Arctic, and which we basically have in the summer now. right? Pretty much it's all gone in the summer. No more ice there, but not the Antarctic. So that's just a false argument to begin with. But then they cite to this New York Post article, which does, and I don't know if the article is accurate. I believe it is accurate. I have no reason to believe it's inaccurate. But what the subheadline of this, and remember, the New York Post is a Rupert Murdoch paper. It's a paper that is, very, very conservative, corporatist, right wing. So if you're going to see an article that claims to debunk global warming, the climate catastrophe, yeah, the New York Post would be the kind of place where that kind of corporatist propaganda would likely be found. But in fact, it isn't. If you look at the article, it's actually responsible. Now, I do think they kind of emphasize a fact that does, without looking at the context in any, even the most cursory look, that fact does suggest, yes, the climate crisis, maybe it's over, it's not as serious as people have said. But as soon as you examine it, yeah, the fact may be true, but it doesn't say anything about the reality of the climate catastrophe. So the New York Post writes, Antarctic ice has made a surprising rebound in mass, scientists say. I think that's probably true. I can't confirm it, but that's what the Post says. I believe it. From 21 to 23, ice mass in East Antarctica particularly showed signs of recovery. Okay, and they're saying, oh, look, see, this proves there's no climate crisis because there's more ice in East Antarctica. But then look, I highlighted it. However, so as soon as you look at that, however, you're like, wait a second, does this really mean there's no climate catastrophe? Surprising rebound in mass. We'll just put up that headline. I thought it was, I like the tabloidy style that the New York Post employs. Antarctic ice has made a surprising rebound in mass, scientists say, May 5 this year. I was like, I'm surprised because it's been getting ever hotter. But as soon as you start looking at it, you realize, no, there's still climate catastrophe. This is only, if anything, evidence of the climate catastrophe. That rebound in mass is actually, ironically, evidence that we are seeing temperatures get hotter and hotter, that we are not, in a better place than we thought we were when it comes to this existential crisis. And it is an existential crisis. I mean, it's the biggest single reason that we have the sixth great extinction. That's accelerating. But why, though, are we seeing more ice and snow on Antarctica? Because researchers say there's been unusual increases in precipitation, snow, which led to an accumulation of snow and ice. This unexpected mass gain temporarily offset. So it's not like anyone's saying this is going to continue. It's a temporary weather variation. And we'll get into it. And then they say it may offer a glimmer of hope. No. And I'll tell you why. It's no glimmer of hope. Because this increased mass is the result of more rain and snow, mostly snow, but I guess some rain in the summer, maybe if there's rain there, I don't know, that freezes, right? So that's more ice. It's not because the oceans are freezing. If the oceans around Antarctica, which have been melting, right? There was, the continent itself, the landmass, has an enormous amount of ice and snow on it. But the surrounding ocean is frozen. Some all year long, and parts of it are freeze during the winter, which is our summer, and if in the northern hemisphere, and some of it melts in the winter, our winter, their summer. So if that were freezing, if you had greater ice masses surrounding Antarctica, that would suggest colder temperatures because water freezes at 32 degrees. salt water, it has to be colder. It is salt water because it's the ocean. So it would suggest if that greater mass of ice was a result of freezing oceans rather than melting oceans, that would mean it's getting colder. But it's not. It's not freezing. The oceans aren't freezing. They're still melting. The ice in the southern oceans is melting. And that ice melt is leading to more precipitation because there's more water. There's more open water closer to Antarctica. So it's hoovered up by the clouds around that area. The water that's now used to be ice, now it's water. It's hoovered up, and then it snows. And some of that snow, not all of it, some of it falls in the ocean, some of it falls on the continent. So there's now more ice and snow than there was. There's another factor that I pointed out. And let me just, so you don't just think it's Hal Ginsberg. Who the hell are you? Are you a climate scientist? You don't know what the hell you're talking about. So let's go to Penn State University, now internationally renowned school. Dateline November 7, 2023, so very recent. Melting ice, falling snow. Sea ice declines enhance snowfall over West Antarctica. So the sea ice melting means that there's more precipitation, more water, open water close to the subcontinent or the continent, and then it falls as snow. So that's one big reason, because you have more water close to the continent. The other reason they don't mention, but I will present, is it's warmer temperatures, but still below freezing, means more snow. So this is from NSIDC. I'm not sure, I forgot what that stands for, some sort of government agency, but they make it very, very clear. Most heavy snowfalls occur when there is relatively warm air near the ground, typically 15 degrees Fahrenheit, -9°C. In Antarctica, it's getting warmer, but still below 32 degrees, still below freezing. So warmer temperatures below freezing, more snow. That's why there's more mass, because it's actually, paradoxically, global warming. It's just one more fact, one more piece of evidence, one more data point that confirms burning fossil fuels is destroying our planet. I talk about this in some detail because I want people to understand when you read, stuff that some Yahoo posts, like me, right? I'm a Yahoo. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a climate. I'm giving you the specific arguments, the specific data to support the position that the scientists take. That's all. All right. I actually did, as a sub headline of this show today, the a quibble with Robert Reich. So Robert Reich is certainly, I would say, on the left. He's a commentator. I've had my differences with Robert Reich at least as far back as 2016, if not before. But I've often recounted how I heard him say that Hillary Clinton would make a great president to Tom Hartman. That was an utterly ridiculous statement. He knew at the time it was false. He never should have said it. But he was protecting the Democratic Party. Now, the argument is always, well, Trump is so bad that she, by comparison, be great, or something like that. But that fails completely. When you say things that absurd, that clearly false, you lose your own credibility. You lose your ability to persuade anyone but those who are 100% behind you. And you look like such a partisan. He's been a Democrat his whole life. He was embedded in the Clinton administration as the Secretary of Labor. So you say something that we all know is ridiculous. Hillary Clinton's entire career, at least since she left the White House as First Lady, has been going against, even before she left, she was there for the remember she spoke out in support of Glass-Steagall, repeal of Glass-Steagall, which I know Reich opposed. He opposed the repeal. She supported it. She was, I believe, in favor of welfare reform, which Reich had a lot of problems with. So he knew from day one that Hillary Clinton was the wrong person to be president. And yet he tells Thom Hartmann that she's going to be great. Well, you say that you can't, we can't take you seriously. You're peeing on my leg and telling me it's raining. Don't do that. But I still read his post as much as I think he's lost a lot of credibility. As much as I read it, and I think you're just making apologies for a corrupt institution that is a huge part of the problem, meaning the Democratic Party. As much as you do all of that, Reich, I'm not saying nothing you write has any value. By the way, don't forget, join us on Facebook, Halitics. Join Halitics on Facebook. It's a little bit, right, self-referential. Why I post so damn often. It's like we're all supposed to be so interested in that. It's a little, I guess, it's cocky, self-centered. I guess it's self-centered. But that said, I actually have wondered myself. So I was intrigued. I'm like, well, you have a hell of an ego to think we're all sitting there wondering what's going on with Reich, that he's posting so often. But every day I get, and by the way, don't forget thumbs up as well. But I every day, like clockwork, I'm getting my Reich fix in my email. I mean, I could decline to subscribe, but no, there's value there. So I've thought myself, how do you write so? Why do you do it so often? I mean, who really cares about all your stuff? And so, yeah, there's an audience for that. And he acknowledges that people have asked him, why are you doing this? Why are you posting so much? So, and it's also interesting because, I have to say there's a bit of self-interest as well, which you could say that's you're being self-centered, Hal. Because, why do I do this? Why do I come on and do this program every day? It's not quite the same as writing, 5-8 paragraphs like he does, but it takes a lot of time and research and all that. Why, what, and he says, and it's kind of the same thing I say, I got to do it. I got nothing else. What else am I going to do? I have to try to stop, the darkness, the encroaching darkness that we've seen encroaching for decades. It's not like it's just brand new darkness. The darkness is just getting darker and darker and darker. So that's why I do it. I had someone even say to me, hey, good for you. At least you kind of saw this coming. You should feel good about that. I'm like, well, it doesn't feel so good to see the Holocaust. Knowing it's coming doesn't really make you happy, even if you talk about it. But also, even still, I think a lot of people don't understand my message. They hear from me what they want to hear, which is, well, yeah, Hal gets how bad Trump is. And maybe he also sort of criticizes the Democrats, and he shouldn't because the Democrats are the solution. But still, it's not like he's unfair. It's not like there's nothing wrong with the Democrats. There's something wrong, but he doesn't really understand we really need to rely upon the Democrats. No, the Democrats are the problem, just like the Republicans are the problem. The Democratic Republicans, the Republican Democrats are the problem. Or they certainly are the face of the problem, which is ultimately corporate control, ultimately billionaire control. Even beyond corporate, it's billionaire control. So Reich says, I post so much because we're in a national emergency. And I want to do what I can to get you the facts, arguments, and analyses you need to take an active revolt. So here's where I have a huge problem. Here's where I believe Robert Reich is part of the problem. He's making things worse. He says that what you need to resist is the Trump regime. But that's not what we need to resist. What we need to resist is billionaire control, wealth and income inequality, militarism, the ecocide for which we are responsible. And that's not just Trump. Yeah, Trump's part of that. I'm not saying he isn't. But so is Joe Biden. So is Kamala Harris. So is Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and Hillary, all the people that Robert Reich says will be great presidents. They're complicit too. They're guilty too. So when you claim Reich, it's just Trump, That what we need to do, the reason I pose so often is because I've got this terrible, I know what our emergency is. We have to resist Trump. No, you got it wrong. You need to resist. The oligarchy, at least AOC and Bernie kind of get it a little bit more than you do. They call it the oligarchy. Of course, they don't talk. They came for the oligarchy too. Oh, AOC. You've got great senators, Tempe. You've got Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego. So 2 terrible senators. So she's part of the problem. Kamala Harris is working tirelessly for genocide. To stop the genocide. I didn't even say genocide. That's AOC. She's part. They're all part. They're embedded in the Leviathan that's consuming the planet. Reich needs to cop to his own complicity and those of his buddies, his allies, his friends, and he knows they're guilty. The guy's not a dummy by any means. But for him to post all this, and this is a guy who's super privileged, retired emeritus professor at Cal Berkeley, man, I wish I had that on my resume. He's telling us what we need to do. We need to take an active role in resisting. And what does that consist of? Share a post with your friends and colleagues. That can be no more than sharing my posts. They're so powerful. They're so persuasive. Well, I tell you to share my stuff too, so I guess we're even there. So because I provide the facts, arguments, and analyses they need to effectively resist. Well, what does that resistance consist of again? I don't see sharing your posts? Maybe going to a fight oligarchy rally? What are you asking people to do specifically? Give your bosses the courage they need to resist, except bosses are often happy or at least satisfied with the status quo. So that's not resistance. That's not resistance. Resistance would be chaining yourself to a mailbox. Resistance would be building a tent city on the quad of Columbia University and then forming a human chain and fighting, nonviolently, resisting. That's resistance. Sharing Robert Reich's posts ain't resistance. What is resistance? Resistance is joining a movement that's independent of of the political party, of the Republican Democrats. That's resistance. Supporting, vociferously advocating that people vote for non-democratic Republicans. That's resistance. So I'm actually going to be resisting this weekend. I hope you will join me. I mean, it's kind of weak tea, I get it. But it's something. At least it's trying to take power away from those who have disempowered us completely. I'll be at the Greenbelt, which is a very nice little town outside of Washington, D.C., just directly, I think it's directly north, maybe north by northeast of D.C. Very nice kind of planned community there in Greenbelt at the Green Man Festival. I will be there tomorrow from 10 when it opens to noon or 1. My good friend Tim. And we're going to just be asking people to consider voting for Green. We've got a candidate for governor, Andy Ellis. He'll be running against Wes Moore next year for governor. So kind of exciting stuff. Looking forward to that. At least I'm doing something. But that's what Robert Reich should be saying. Hey, look for people to support, to vote for who are outside of the Republican Democratic hegemony. Or what is the term that Senator Nina uses? She calls them hegemon, right? So there's a hegemonic party. She calls the United States the hegemon, the global hegemon, which we are. Although we get some challenge, I think, from the EU and from China. So I'm not completely the hegemon. But in this country, there is a political hegemon, and it's called the Democratic Republicans. Or you could call them Republican Democrats for all I care. The Greenbelt Green Man Festival should be a lot of fun. Hope you'll make it. I'll be there. If you come, please say hi to me. Say, hey, Hal, I saw you on your videos. I watch your videos on Halitics. And yeah, do share as Reich wants you to share his newsletter. I note that I was so excited when I did meet with a Halitics viewer, and she came up to me and she said, "Oh, I watch your videos." I was like, "Yes, wow, that was awesome." So that really feels good. So if you want to make me feel good, tell me that you watch my videos when you see me personally. And I would note that I'm really trying to. That's what I'm really, because Voltaire said, "Cultivate your garden." So I know JD said, first your family, then your community, then your town, then your city, wait, all that. And the Pope says, no. You love everybody. We have a duty to everyone. And of course, he's right. Father Robert Francis, now Pope Leo the 14th, is correct. But at the same time, we can impact often the people around us to a greater degree. And we have a duty, I think, to try to be as kindly and as supportive of them as we can be. And that's my constant resolution to myself. Try to be supportive, try to be kind, try to do what you can for people around you. So yeah, if you see me at an event, I'm around you, you're around me, say hi. So more from Reich, just to get into it and why I have such a huge problem with him. I think part of being an influencer, part of being a leader is you cop to your own mistakes, your own errors, where you've gotten it wrong. Just won't do that. You won't just say, yeah, you know what? I've been too strong a defender of the Democratic Party. I haven't acknowledged the sins of that party, how it too is actually part of the problem. He won't do it. It's all about Trump. It's not even about the Republican Party. It's just Trump is the worst ever. And some of his message is very not only is it counterproductive because it pits Trump voters against non-Trump voters, which is very problematic because there are Trump voters that obviously share the same values that we do. When I say that we, I mean, want everyone to have health care, want peace. Trump's message of peace was very popular. There's a big reason he won. So for Reich to say the struggle is between Trump and everyone else, no, the struggle is between everybody and the Republican Democrats and the billionaires and their supporters. And even that's a little simplistic. We have to be somewhat simplistic. So that's really a problem. He's making it harder for us to build a resistance. Look at how he does this. He says the fight over abortion, transgender rights, equal marriage rights, and rights against domestic abuse are really about preserving the most intimate forms of freedom, including freedom from men. So again, you're pitting two groups of oppressed people, men and women. Now, obviously, not all men and all women are oppressed, but some men and some women are oppressors as well. So see, the Pope gets it. He chooses his namesake is somebody who said, no, it's about labor. It's about the global community. It's about peace. Reich doesn't get that. And because of that, he's making things worse. He's making it harder for us to unite against whatever you want to call it, the caucus-ocracy, the corporatocracy, I don't care, call it whatever. He gets it too. This is what is so incredibly frustrating. Here's what Reich has to say to lefty economics professor Joseph Stiglitz. I'm not sure about the exact date. I think it was, in the past 10 years. I'm not sure. This is describing here. Here he'll be describing when he was in the Clinton administration. So there's Stiglitz. Let's start this.
If it was your word or anyway, it became fashionable to call
corporate
it
welfare.
Corporate welfare. There were a lot of what are called tax expenditures that are spending for things hidden in the tax code, subsidizing corporate jets, subsidizing fossil fuels.
So Stiglitz is talking about what he doesn't like called corporate welfare, where the government, because the term welfare became such a lightning rod under Reagan, right? And you talk about welfare queens and all that, and we got to take money away from families that are just barely surviving. And Bill Clinton continued that. He continued to demonize those who depended on government support to survive and insisted on welfare reform. And Reich, as I mentioned earlier in this program, didn't agree with that strategy. He didn't agree with that policy. It was a strategy. It was a strategy. It was a strategy to try to break off working middle-class people and some working-class people from African Americans, try to make it about race, claiming that it was African Americans who were dependent, not just African Americans, poor people from Appalachia, demonize those who needed government support, basically. So Reich does not like that. He's like, they're human beings. They deserve, a lot of times it's bad luck. It could be racism. It could be sexism. It could be a million different reasons that people need our help. And that's what the Pope says is really important. You got to love everybody. You got to take care of everybody, right? But that's not what Bill Clinton wanted. That's not what Secretary of the Treasury Robert Rubin, former Goldman Sachs CEO, wanted. No, they wanted more corporate welfare. They wanted the companies that they owned shares in or that they just flat out owned. They wanted those companies to get plenty of tax breaks. Or as Reich accurately and Stiglitz accurately called it, corporate welfare. So Reich brings this up. Stiglitz brings this up, and what is the response from the Democratic Clinton administration to the term corporate welfare?
Went ballistic. When
I'm appalled.
So there's Reich. It's like, oh, I'm appalled. How dare Robert? He's like being very sarcastic, obviously, because he and Robert Rubin had their differences, even though they're both named Robert. And they both have a last name that begins with the letter R. And I think they're both Jewish as well.
Started calling these things corporate welfare.
Actually, I don't know if you remember this, but I gave a speech in which I called these things corporate welfare. If we're moving from welfare to work, which was one of the major themes of the Clinton administration, why don't...
Right, so welfare reform, let's call it welfare to work, because that'll make everyone think, oh, these lazy gadabouts who aren't working, we're going to make them work. We're all better off. And Reich is saying, okay, well, if you don't like welfare for poor people, then let's help them transition with money that we're going to recover from the corporations that are currently getting corporate welfare, right? That was his response, which is actually a really good response. I agree with you, Reich. You're absolutely right there.
We get corporations off their welfare and finance a better welfare to work system. I was called into the chief of staff's office.
So I'm not sure. Was that Ari? I guess that would have been Panetta, right? I think that would have been Panetta. Leon Panetta, Democrat, of course, from Monterey.
Various other members of the White House. And I was told if I ever use that term again, I might not have my job.
Yeah, I remember that.
So he's going to lose his job. You can't use the term corporate welfare because we get lots of contributions, donations from corporations. And the reason we get them is because we do them favors, because we carve out little benefits for them. This is what Trump is constantly being criticized for, and rightly so. All the corruption in his administration, pay for play, do what I want, or you don't get anything. You're going to lose your tax exempt status. We're not going to do business with you if you don't give me a free legal aid. So what the Clinton administration is saying, Robert Reich, is, hey, our good buddies at ExxonMobil and at IBM, they don't really like it when you say corporate welfare. It makes them feel bad about themselves, like they're feeding at the public trough. So if you say it again, you're fired. That's what Bill Clinton's team told Robert Reich. And what does Robert Reich turn around and do? Hillary Clinton will be a great president. The whole problem, all of our problems are because of the Republicans. This is a guy who witnesses firsthand, who's directly threatened with his job because he wants to take on overweening corporate power. And the Democratic president says, you do that again, you're fired. And what is his response? Oh, whatever you want. Although he's going to tell us how brave he was, right?
That.
You?
That's why I don't know if I should have brought it up, but it was an emotional. I mean, it was a very emotional. You saw the forces at play. But let me just.
Oh, but let me make sure that everybody knows. I use that term repeatedly.
All right, so he kept saying it. So look at how brave I am. I actually, even though they said you can't say corporate welfare, I kept saying it. He also did leave the White House. I'm not sure when. And maybe there was some real bravery there. Maybe he did take, fall on his sword a little bit. Say, okay, I'm not going to kowtow. Except he does. He did. He keeps telling you have to vote for these horrible people. His idea of resistance doesn't include replacing the Democratic Party. So he's not making things better. He's not taking ownership of what he did, of his contributions to the terrible place we're at now. I can't take him seriously. I can accept his analyses to a significant degree, but he's not demanding better. So I got a huge problem with that. All right, I will be back Monday. Yes, Monday. Maybe we'll have our good friend who couldn't make it on today. I'm going to see if I can get. Or I also really want to get Catholic Jack on because he is the right person to talk about Leo the 14th, being that he is a devout Catholic. So he always struck me. I think he would self-describe as a devout Catholic. And I just want to say one thing about that, actually. I just put up my closing slide, but let's leave this up for a sec. So I'm not Catholic, right? I don't believe in that stuff. And I don't think Jesus was the Son of God. And I don't believe there's a Trinity. And I don't believe the Pope has some sort of pipeline, he's got a bat phone to heaven or any of that. Or that there even is a heaven. I don't believe any of that. I'm Jewish. I don't believe any of that. It's all a load of crap as far as I'm concerned. But, the faith part of it that you're supposed to. But no, much of these religions is incredibly beautiful. Love thy fellow person. Turn the other cheek. Charity. It's beautiful. What Pope Leo said about Jesus calling on us to love everyone equally. That's beautiful. What could be better? Welcome strangers, welcome immigrants. This is the best we could be. So what is it with these? And I'm just using Catholics as an example, but Jews too, and every religion. What is it with these Catholics like Clarence Thomas and Alito, whose decisions, or J.D. Vance, their decisions, their policies, everything they do and say is so completely antithetical to the message of love, right? Jesus' messages of love, the Pope's message of love, the dignity of working people. Everything that these Catholics do is counterindicated by the teaching of their own religion. So, shouldn't there be some, do you just get to say, well, I'm Catholic? It's ridiculous. It pisses the hell out of me that you hide yourself behind this identity that you so completely have renounced in your day-to-day actions. All right, that's it. That's my last little peroration. I will be back Monday. Have a great weekend.